Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to the latest OnePath podcast. Today we are joined with a beloved special guest all the way from Michigan, United States of America, none other than Mufti Abdul Wahab Waheed from Miftaah Institute, and one of 5 siblings who have all become ulama. Abdul Wahab Waheed, how's everything?
Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
It's a pleasure to have you on. We've been big fans of you
Allah
and
bless
the
you guys.
work that you've done at Miftaah. Beautiful. You've hosted the likes of Imam Abu Sulaiman, Shaykh Hamza, and everyone's personal favorite champion, Khabib, as well.
Definitely.
Yeah,
So we're actually joined with someone who runs the second best podcast in the Muslim world. Jazakallah khairan. Thank you.
No, I'm honored that you even consider it as second best. You know,
MashaAllah.
because OnePath takes the first 3.
You're
MashaAllah.
doing a great job.
Alhamdulillah. Allah bless you guys. How you guys been?
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
How's your stay in Australia? How are you finding it?
Alhamdulillah. I mean, I used to hear that Australia is warm and it's the weather is. Yeah, we're us brothers are big water fans, so we like jet skiing and going on boats. So in my mind, I thought when I'm gonna come, I'm gonna hit the water. And mashallah, it's been nothing but windy.
Yeah.
You know?
It's very cold. You came in winter.
cold.
It's the first day of winter, actually. The day you landed is actually the first day of winter.
But it's still better than our winter. We have, all you see is white snow. So alhamdulillah.
We have some beautiful summers in Australia.
So we got to come back
especially
for
in
that.
Sydney. Beautiful
gotta come back
summers.
for
You'll
that,
definitely
inshallah.
love it here. Mufti Abdul Wahab, I want to take this back. You know, I've actually always wanted to ask you this specific question. You come from a family of 5 brothers. Abdullah, Abdul Rahman, Abdul Aziz, Abdul Wahab, and Abdul Raheem, rahimahullah. 5 brothers. All have graduated as ulama or muftis.
We just graduate as people that serve the community.
يعني,
But
all right, لا
alhamdulillah,
نزكي على الله أحد.
but
We're not going
alhamdulillah,
to purify or sanctify anyone.
But we completed
Allah
our
knows.
studies, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
But generally take about 10 to 12 years with everything included. Alhamdulillah. And so it's 5 of us, alhamdulillah.
Now, for me, that's kind of like a miracle story. For me, that's a story that is like to any Muslim parent of 5 boys or 5 girls or whatever it may be, any Muslim parent of children, we all aspire to have this dream. You know, وَجَعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. Oh Allah, you know, give us from our offspring imams, scholars, people that will serve this deen. Now, for me, that's a miracle story. How did it happen? And from your perspective, what was the cause? What was the impetus?
So, I mean, if we want to take it back even further.
Take it back to the
you know,
very beginning, before you were born.
I think
Because you're like the 4th from the 5.
I think for all youngsters, brothers and sisters, this is where the focus is. That it started when our parents met. We don't have necessarily a unique, life-changing story that once upon a time
There was no apple from
like
the
I was,
tree.
there was I wasn't
Abu
playing a
Hanifa
guitar
story.
one day, and I changed. Or we changed. Of course, we had challenges. I mean, we were born and raised in the States. My parents are physicians. They came to the States in 1989. My father, worked in the States as a physician for so many years, and so on and so forth. So the idea was it wasn't by need. It was by choice, right? And it was by design. So when our parents they met and they got married, the idea was to always, whatever Allah gives us, we will use it to serve deen, regardless of what we have, boys, girls. The idea is that we have to propagate the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we do it the best way that Allah allows us to do it. And then comes the effort, then comes the juhud. One is the intention. This is why Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah would say that we have to keep a short time frame between the intention and the amal. That a lot of times we say, no, when this kid grows older, then I'll start the journey. Let him grow a little older. The time starts right away. There was a young mother who came to Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah, and she said to the Imam, Ya Imam, ij'alhu mithlak. Make this child like you. And he responded by saying, Ta'akharti ya ukhti. You're kind of too late. I would have, if you came to me while he was in your stomach, in your womb, I would have taught you what to read in the du'as, in the Quran. Not saying that we're ever too late, but the idea is that it's also never too early. Oftentimes we hear that statement being thrown around, which is absolutely correct, right? We're never too late. حتى يأتيك اليقين, until we leave this world. But at the same time, we're never too early. That the journey of Ismail began the moment he was born. Where Ibrahim alayhi salam had to leave him in a desert with Hajar. But it was that sacrifice. If you were to ask Ismail alayhi salam, what did you do for this? He would say, I don't know, ask my parents. Because it was that sacrifice that made Makkah, Makkah. Right? Any land can be fertilized as long as there is the right type of materials used to fertilize it. And the right type of material or the elements to fertilize the land of America or Australia is tears, is juhud. There needs to be an effort that is made. We can only imagine how much our parents had to cry when they let us go. And we went to boarding schools, right? And at one time, all 5 of us were in boarding schools. So there is constant double thoughts, even for us as we became hafiz. And like, okay, now I can go back to school. Like, you know what, let me try a few more years. And then after that, like, you know what, I want to become mufti as well. No, I want to, and then in due time, it not only becomes what you're doing, it becomes the sole purpose of your life. And hopefully it stays that way. There's a beautiful dua from our Salaf. Allahumma la tahrimna khayra ma indaka bi sharri ma indana. Which means, oh Allah, do not deprive us of the good that you have because of the flaws that we hold. Because we are not people, we are not the purest vessels for this pure tradition of knowledge.
If anything, we're just echoes.
We're just there. But the ant was used. The spider web was used.
I guess your roots are firm in your conviction. I think.
I think it starts from there, though. I think the way your household, we would generally have some type of ta'aleem or halaqa in your home on a nightly basis, and you see your father, who's generally, and I would end with this point per se, in that journey. A lot of times, everyone sees their father to be like a Superman person, like everything that your father does, like this, it's beautiful. And then you see your father, who's a physician, doing all these amazing things that you think, which are amazing, obviously, but he's always bringing these people to your house who don't look the part of being revered by society. They don't look the part of being honored by the general public, but your father is always respecting them. Some of them even younger than him, and your mother is serving them. And then you constantly see this. And like, why is my dad driving 2 hours to meet this guy who doesn't know how to speak English? And you realize, because they were scholars. They had something else to add. It wasn't we always talk about don't judge the book by its cover. So we should keep that notion consistent in this regard as well. These are people that served Deen for so many years. So when you saw your father and your parents and your family serving these scholars, I asked my mother once, what do you think? I mean, we're still in this journey, we're struggling, but what do you think allowed us to be here where we are today? In our family, we've seen a lot of struggle. Obviously, we lost our brother, not lost, but we saw him transition from this world to the next. So, I mean, there's the moments that you kind of think about, you serve and you see this happen. But so one day we asked our mother, but what do you think? What should we tell people? Like
when they ask this question,
what should we tell people when they ask this question? Because people ask this question all the time. And she said, if I could think of one thing outside of du'as, obviously du'as are very important. The du'a, it has its own trajectory that we don't see. She says that us being able to continue serving scholars and opening our home to people of knowledge, and opening our home just generally, but specifically to people of scholarship, of tradition, of some type of knowledge, that we can invite them into our home, serve them, and then take their du'as. I don't see that today. We hardly ask people to make du'a for us. It's like I'll make my own du'a. Yes, true, you can make your own du'a, but there is a reason why even Sahabas asked each other, make du'a for me as well. There's a wisdom behind that.
The famous I think poem of Imam Shafi'i, أحب الصالحين ولست منهم لعل أن أنال بهم الشفاعة. So I love the righteous people, even though I'm not from them, and he was definitely from them, but just so that perhaps that I can gain from them intercession, dua in this instance. 100%. So that's actually a gem you've actually revealed to us, that it was from their service. to the people of
sir.
The
knowledge.
scholars of old would always have their houses open. I mean, one of the Habib would, I think it was in Mombasa, when he was in Mombasa, his house would be open 7 days a week for anybody to come down and to sit and to learn. And I think these are really important things that it's kind of like a dying art that we don't really have that anymore. Especially we kind of corner ourselves off into our own little circles and we become a bit more restricted. But you've also talked upon the point of parents. I think that's a really important thing. I remember, especially on this road of seeking knowledge, I remember Imam Malik's mother, what she used to do when she used to wrap his turban and take him to school. She said to his teachers, to Imam Malik's teachers, if you were to learn anything from my son, first learn from his patience. So it's like we're not talking about. It's hard, I think, at times to seek and to go into roads of knowledge, but I guess what we're talking about is it's okay. You've just started. We're talking about the generations of you that have led for you to come at this very moment to arrive at knowledge. I mean, knowledge is often visited upon. It doesn't really visit you in some sense of the meaning. But I think, and especially,
I know you're 100%. Like Imam Malik from the adab, like he says, 19 years I learned adab, and then I started learning knowledge. Imam Shafi rahimahullah was an orphan whose mother raised him. Imam Bukhari rahimahullah was the same. So many of our scholars were just their parents. I mean, we often say behind the scenes, right? There's people behind the scenes who allow the work to take place. Like we're in recording this podcast. There's people behind the scenes that no one will see that are allowing this work to take place. There are people behind the scenes of our life who allow the work to take place. They never get any credit. They don't get any recognition. But without their work, we wouldn't be able to even move. And amongst behind the scenes, the most important role is your parents, right? They sacrifice anything and everything. Everyone sacrifices. There's no one in this world that doesn't sacrifice. It just becomes the question that we ask is, what are we sacrificing for? What is your source of motivation behind your sacrifice, right? Our source of motivation has to be one. The moment our source of motivation becomes conflicting, our decisions become harder to make. Because one is, okay, I need this. I need to make sure my education is completed. My money is like this. But I also want to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So now they can be in line with each other, but there has to be one dominant source of motivation. So what is our dominant source of motivation? What is our dominant point of reference? For the Sahabas and for the Salaf, it was one. Is Allah happy with me? And is the Prophet pleased? And that dominant source of motivation allows your decisions to actually be easy because this is my motivation, right? So one is parents, and then definitely your siblings, our older siblings, and
Pushing one another.
they push us, man. I don't think we would be close to where we are without our siblings pushing us. And if they ever watch in different ways, in different ways,
in the right direction.
I think rivalry is a secondary aspect. I think that comes when you're a little older, but just pure love. I think there's only two people in this world that actually wish for you to go further than them. One is your teachers, and one is your parents and older brothers or siblings.
I would have to agree with that, especially with the
they
parents.
push you, man.
But my father always told me, because of the great work that he's been able to do and facilitate, alhamdulillah, he goes, I don't want my son to be like me. And he said, and everyone was just standing. What do you mean? You're so and so. They, of course they, I guess,
Recognize him.
Yeah, recognize him.
Mashallah.
And
As they should.
Alhamdulillah. And he goes, no, he shouldn't be like me. He needs to be better than me. So I guess every parent would want to have that child to be surpass them in that sense.
It's a genuine love, like when Yusuf goes to his father, to his father, of course.
So there's a lot of there's growing pains in that process, with your parents and your siblings. That's beautiful. So that plays a big role. But it comes down, I think, your environment, the people around you play a big role. But at the end of the day, Musa was raised in the palace of Fir'aun. There has to be your own effort. There has to be du'as. وَمَنْ أَرَادَ الْآخِرَةَ وَسَعَى لَهَا سَعْيَهَا وَهُوَ مُؤْمِنٌ فَأُولَٰئِكَ كَانَ سَعْيُهُم مَشْكُورًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that whoever intends to live for the akhirah, مَنْ جَعَلَ أَكْبَرُ هَمِّهِ هَمُّ الْآخِرَةِ كَفَاهُ اللَّهُ هَمُّهُ فِي الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ.
Wow.
Like whoever makes their biggest concern of life the concern of people and their akhirah, and of akhirah itself, Allah suffices for them in everything else. So the idea is وَسَعَى لَهَا سَعْيَهَا. They make a continuous effort. Allah says, look, فَأُولَٰئِكَ كَانَ سَعْيُهُم مَشْكُورًا. I will appreciate your effort. It's the only system in this world that rewards us not based upon our results, but based upon our effort, which is unique. Every other system is predicated based on results. if you don't bring even our meetings, like is it done
There's
or is it,
KPIs.
is it not done? Okay, I don't really care how much work you put in. It's not done, right? But Allah's system is you make an effort. That effort is also rewarded. There's a beautiful hadith. Prophet says, "Man qara'a al-Qur'an fahuwa ma'a safrati al-kiram al-barara." Whoever recites the Quran, they will be in the company of the elite angels. And then he adds on to it, as if he knew what the Sahabas were thinking. وَمَنِ تَعْتَعَ فَهُوَ شَاقٌ عَلَيْهِ فَلَهُ أَجْرَانِ. Whoever struggles and has a hard time getting through, a lot of days we struggle in the beginning, like that difficulty, فَلَهُ أَجْرَانِ. They get double the reward because there's more effort attached to it. So definitely your parents and siblings and your teachers come into place. So there's different people that are added in your life at the right time, right? And then as long as you stay true to the system and stay true to the effort, Allah brings the right people at the right time to motivate you again. So even after becoming, quote unquote scholar or doing your ilm program or your mufti program, there are times where like, should I be doing something else? And Allah brings the right people to motivate you again. So Allah brings, just like how we're hearing the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, لولا أن رأى برهان ربي, where he saw this proof from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. People say it was a picture of Yaqub, whatever it was, but that comes in your life, and Allah continues adding these different elements that allow you to stay motivated. And at a point, you have to realize that you have to now become a source of motivation. You can't always be picked up. Now you have to pick others up. And I think the moment that we're able to turn that switch on, even the trajectory and perspective of your life changes. Now it's not about the Prophet ﷺ, if you look into his life, he wasn't a person who wasn't a happy person. He lost 6 of 7 children in his own life.
Very sad.
He's
Buried all
smiling
of
all
his,
the time. I guess like
but he was
he's
still
holding.
smiling.
Yeah.
So he has in Shama'il, he has these 2 interesting, I know this is a tangent, but
No,
he has these 2 interesting qualities or characteristics. One is da'im tabassum. He was always smiling. But the other is mutawasil al-ahzan. He was always sad. So he was able to bury his sadness within him, his grief. And majority of his sadness and grief was not even for his family that he lost. It was rather for the ummah. His tears were for the ummah. But he was able to bury that and smile in front of people because he realized how much that smile meant to people. Right? Like it means so much to my sahabas that I smile at them. And when he Sallallahu left this world, they have this beautiful story in regards to him unveiling himself from his room and smiling at the Sahabas for the last time. And Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu and Anas ibn Malik, they narrate that at that moment we were all about to break our salat because of how we could sense his presence looking at us, and we could see from the corner of his eyes that he was smiling. So that smile meant the world to them. He was always smiling at people. So the moment something happens, I think we experienced this after our brother, rahimahullah, that now you feel like, okay, now I'll just do my work. No, you can't just do your work. There's more to that. There's more to your life. There's more to your purpose, and it's to serve the ummah. And whatever that takes. It doesn't matter if it's what we're talking about, 9 to 5 or 9 to life. You have to do what you can, and inshallah, Allah will take care of the different aspects of your life. Not saying that we're naive. Can't be naive either, but somewhat committed. Like how physicians are when they go to med school. They're just committed. It's not like my brother he's an alim. He graduated as a scholar in 2012, 2013. Then he went in the medical pathway, and now he just graduated a few weeks ago, and he's going into ortho. In America, it takes longer to become a doctor. It's like 9 years, So he was committed to it, and it was good for our students that there's an aspect that you can do both if you want. But whatever you're doing, you can serve deen. Like, mashallah, you guys are not scholars, but you guys do so much work.
In your own capacity. I feel like everyone has something to contribute. And, your mother, I don't know if she was a scholar, but the capacity
our family, there's no one.
Subhanallah.
There's no one that's been on this path. Our father, in our parents, they decided. It's not necessarily, something that it has to be within your family lineage or something that other scholars have, people in your family have done. We can start with our children, right? And it's not that our children have to become the next greatest sheikh in the world. That should be the niyyah. That I want you to become, a great scholar. But we just do it for the sake of pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then let it go its way.
Can I just ask you a question? I think within this whole space of I dream or have this grand vision of making my child a scholar or making my child the next imam, there's a lot of times where we actually see that it backfires, especially in our community. Like some people feel like sometimes it's forced.
Into
And I don't want to like, you know, take this tangent, but I feel like it's important. The Prophet ﷺ was seen as someone who's always smiling. So there was that love component. I want to know, were there any practical methods your mother kind of used to make you love the deen as opposed to force feeding it and then have it backfire when you turn 20 or when you get a bit of freedom? Because we see that a lot, unfortunately.
And methodologies change over time. And I do think we have to understand where people perhaps in prior generations came from. But from us, it has come from a place of love. I'm not saying you don't encourage your children, right? If tomorrow someone that's going through the path of engineering or becoming a physician, if they say, you know, I'm not sure if I want to do it, you're not going to say, okay, you know what, go ahead, do what you want to do. You're going to encourage them. You're going to give them targheeb. Raghibhum. There's Prophet gave targheeb. He encouraged people. He taught them the motivation. He taught them how to remain motivated. And he also taught them why they should be motivated. Jannatin arduha as-samawatu wal-ard. Right? There's a Jannah that's equal to the heavens and the earth. And that motivated them. So incentivize them, give them reward. I mean, there's a reward system, right? There's everything that we do has a short-term effect and a long-term effect. So your parents, they kind of embody that for you. So there's reward, like after you do this, there's this. But at the same time, I think the environment of the home, it sets you up. Like it sets you up. You know, when in our countries, if your parents are physicians, you kind of are already set up to become that. Just the atmosphere of the home, the setup, the classes you start taking from the age of 13, 14. So more important than pushing them and forcing them is to show them, right? Our children cannot be that which they don't see. They cannot become that which they don't hear. So if they haven't heard it, they haven't seen it. Again, the whole idea of scholars coming into our home, the whole idea of, you know, your parents doing certain things that you see, that automatically turns a switch on,
especially in the early ages as well. Because I think we were reminded in one of the other podcasts is that you play with your children for the first 7 years. First 7 years, and then after that you and then you teach them.
But even in those first 7 years, like I'm gonna be a bit biased because I've got children within those first 7 years. What and you yourself? So what is your strategy in this time? I guess
I've asked my parents.
Yes, you've asked them for clues
to help me, man. But
what did you do to raise it?
It's a struggle. I think it's definitely going to be a struggle. But as long as we know what the end goal is, right? So we cannot be unclear about where we want to go. If we can't be, there cannot be a unknown destination. It has to be known. This is where I want to be. This is where I want my children to be. Man, I say, like, when we start institutions, what you guys started OnePath, we have a 20-year, vision that's drawn out of where we want to be in 20 years. We can't have that for our children. It's more important than any institution in the world. Where do we want to see our children? And we take baby steps in an institution to reach to that point. You start building it up. OnePath wasn't always the greatest or the strongest Muslim production company that there is, but now it is one of the strongest.
It's okay, come on, it's okay.
You know, come on, like, please, man, we're talking about OnePath. No, but it became that, right? So that there needs to be a vision for our children, right? And then without force, with love, with fada'il. This is why it's so important to speak about the fada'il of things. Children, like my son, he's like, I mean, he's 8 months. But even 8 months, like if I say certain things, do certain things, you can tell they pick it up. I have nephews and nieces, a lot of them. Alhamdulillah, we have 9. And they pick up everything you do. Like I have one nephew, when they asked him in school, who do you want to become like? He said, I want to become like my uncle.
MashaAllah.
For some reason, it wasn't me. It was his other uncle.
He
messed up. I think he made a mistake. I think he made a mistake. But I let him go on that. But he chose one of his uncles, right? And it was the eldest brother, Shaykh Abdullah, which I guess there's a bias there. And he's like, he's the eldest. You can give him more AD. I can't give him any AD. But and he drew like a person who's wearing a turban and I think that's a part because he's seeing these people around him and he's seeing how much his father loves and respects his older brother. So kind of it plays a big role, and I think it's a underrated role. It's an underrated role. You know how they used to say that it takes a village to raise a child. And now, of course, with all these screens and so on, they play a big role. But it still takes a village, your own family, to raise your children with muhabba. Prophet never used. He taught everything through muhabba. There was, if I can say, one story about after Fatih Makkah. And then there was the Battle of Hunayn, so Ta'if and Banu Thaqif that took place. There was these few youngsters who were actually mocking the adhan.
Mm.
Just because whenever the Muslims would come into a land, they would call the adhan. It was a symbol of love, and it was an invitation that you're welcome to come in. Nothing more, nothing less. So they called the adhan to these youngsters. We're smart kids. They got the words and started copying. They're Arabs. They knew the words. And as they were mocking it, the Prophet heard them. And he said, call for them. So the kids that came, they were all like, they're scared. Like, what's this guy going to do to us? So he asked them one by one, can you repeat the words? So they all repeat the words. And finally, he asked his one youngster, can you repeat the words? And he repeats the words. He said, I was looking for you. Because amongst the people that were mocking the adhan, one of them had a very melodious voice. And the Prophet was always seeking out talent for the sake of deen. And he heard his voice, like, I was looking for you. Come here, repeat it again. And this is all, the youngster said, this is all I know. So the Prophet taught him the adhan from the beginning until the end. And then he put his hand on his head and he said that you will become someone that will be used for this. So in Mecca, the Prophet made him the mu'adhin. And he remained the mu'adhin until his demise.
And he was just like at the start,
he was a kid, just calling
mucking
the
around
adhan.
a bit, yeah.
And his hair, it turned, as he grew older, it turned white. But there was one patch that never turned white.
Because of where the Prophet
and they would ask him, the Prophet touched my hair. So it never turned white. So there was love and muhabba. Like easily at that time, you're mocking the adhan, you want to show me, I'll show you what mocking looks like. There was a love, come here. You know
turned
what?
into a talent.
And used it. Used it.
You've turned into, I think you've touched upon the foundations of seeking knowledge as well. I think Sidi Ahmed Zarruq was, in one of his books, was talking about it. I think there's 3 steps. Number 1 was having that direction that is towards Allah, and seeking out that knowledge. Number 2, and having that spiritual guide with you, whoever it may be, your shaykh, your
Murabbi.
Yeah, and even your parents as well. And then the third one was also keeping the remembrance of Allah, to have that present
in
heart.
today's time, Habibi, now it's much more available, right? The accessibility of knowledge should never take away the beauty of it.
Do you think, on that note, because I think we have a lot of shaykhs and shaykhas or ustadas, alhamdulillah, that people don't often seek when they're already in their back garden.
They're the most important people.
They're the most important people, right? You go all the way. I know some people who go all the way to maybe Tareem and whoever it may be, and they say, and the shaykh will reference, do you know so and so? I've never heard of that name. Oh, but you're from Australia. This person's in Australia. So you go all the way around there because perhaps people may think and it's not a bad thing. Of course, you should go and seek knowledge, but I think what we have in our own gardens is underutilized.
It's majhulun fil ard wa ma'rufun fis sama'. There's some of them are unknown in this world, but they're known in the heavens, where it really matters, right? But at that same point, it's our responsibility, if people know us, that we know them, and that we lead people to them, right? And I use the example of, in the States, I'm sure in Australia the same thing. Like you have physicians and you have nurses and NPs and you have PAs, physician assistants, and all these different type of people who serve the patient. As a normal person, as I'm sitting in the hospital, I can't tell the difference. They're all the same. Like they're all coming in and using me as like a, experimenting on me. But they're all serving the patient. I can't tell the difference. But I promise you, the moment the physician walks in, you know who the physician is. Because the way that everyone else changes, this person is the physician.
So that's a bit like yourself, Shaykh. When you walk in, you have this presence, mashallah. We can feel it. We know that the Muftis
are in that same train of thoughts. We know who scholars are. People that are watching videos online or studying with Miftaah or studying with whoever, watching OnePath videos, they may not necessarily know that person is a scholar because there is no white coat that you wear as a scholar. You just live it, right? But we should know them. And it's our job that when they walk in, we show them the respect that they deserve. And now everyone else will notice that if this person who we see online, who is considered to be a scholar, is honoring this scholar and the sheikh that we've never heard of, guess what? We don't care what his name is anymore.
Even if it was out of respect, I know when I was studying in Malaysia, one of the sheikhs walked by, all the kids, they put me to shame. I was enjoying my dinner after a long day of studies, alhamdulillah, and the sheikh walked by. All the young kids all stood up. I'm just looking. I'm just have my noodles just in my fork in my. I was like, "What's going on?" And I saw the sheikh, and all the young kids put me to shame. All stood up.
In some traditions, that's normal. I mean, it doesn't even have to be to that extent. I mean, respect and love, just getting up to say salam, smiling at the person.
And if it wasn't for his wisdom, then it should be for his age at least, or her age.
100%. So I think that's those people in the background who are making who are making most of the effort, they should be honored and respected in this world, and Allah will take care of them in the akhirah as well. Ghazali, rahimahullah, says, if we can add to this, he says believers can either be farmers or gardeners, one of the two. Then he says a true believer, a mu'min, will normally choose to be a gardener, as an example. Farmers and gardeners do the same thing. They both plant and they both water their crops or their plants. But a farmer will consider it to be a failure if at the end of the year he is not able to harvest his crops and benefit himself and his family through it. Because every year it's fallah, he finds success in it, right? Hence he's called a fallah. If he's unable to, if the crops go bad that year, or if it takes 2 years or 3 years, it's a failure because that my goal was to harvest the crops that year. But a true believer is like a gardener who will plant the seeds and water them for 12 years, 10 years, and never benefit from them and continue watering them. And finally a time comes where that garden or that tree grows and it gives its fruits.
It may not even be in that person's lifetime.
In that person's lifetime, but everyone is still benefiting from those fruits. So that's why we always, in our tradition, we always send reward and make dua for our teachers and their teachers all the way to the Sahabas, because that was a garden that they planted. And the beauty of a garden is once you plant it and once it starts giving fruits, it continues giving fruits. You don't have to keep planting. Now people will take those seeds and plant somewhere else, but it's all connected. And that's what we are.
In service as well,
definitely. Even like when you build an institution, the institution should never be for the individual, but rather to serve the people after the individual passes away. And that's, I guess, comes back to the topic of legacy. We'll get to the topic of legacy. But before we get to the topic of legacy, I wanted to touch on the importance of community. So you went out at Miftaah Institute in Warren, Michigan. You built an institution to serve the community. Now, this is going to be an educational institution to teach Muslims, train Muslims, and perhaps future scholarship for the community.
Inshallah.
When it comes to the topic of community, you've got various factions, elements of the community, different cultures, different backgrounds. I can't even imagine what it's like to be in Michigan, coming from Sydney, Australia. How well, or how did you incorporate this understanding of the different people and the different backgrounds that they have to ensure that your institution facilitates for them? Because we're speaking about physicians, right? The best of physicians is the one who knows his people. So how did you take that into consideration when you built this institution?
Yeah, subhanAllah, that's a beautiful question. First, we have Miftaah, and then we also have a sister organization which started before. It's called Michigan Islamic Institute, which is a full-time seminary, which serves students that come to learn for 7-8 years straight. So that's also a place that serves at a point of higher level of scholarship. But to answer your question, you showed me, you all were showing me like your core values, and one of them was prophetic approach.
Yeah.
I think that's the same. The prophetic approach is always the most inclusive approach, right? They say in business, you don't have to reinvent the wheel when you have a system that works. There is no system in this world that can ever come close to the system of our Habib Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And that is a system which will always work if we aim to embody it in its truest form. How was it possible that this man, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he had no financial benefit for people. Like people were not becoming Muslims because of financial benefit. There was no political benefit in Mecca. There was no societal benefit. Actually, there was nothing but harm in all three aspects. But they were ready to leave everything to become Muslim. And this became the greatest classroom in this world. The methodology was very simple, right? There was no amazing classrooms. But in this classroom, everyone was an A+ student. وَكُلًّا وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الْحُسْنَى. Everyone was guaranteed Jannah, passing with flying colors. So he made an inclusive community. He was able to found an inclusive community due to his love for people and due to empowering them and making them feel valued. Like that idea, making people come into your community, into your space, and making them feel valued is something that I think we all struggle
regardless
with.
Of class.
Regardless of where you're coming from. We all struggle with. And at the right level as well. So I don't think we're doing a great job at it, but I do think it's a conscious effort. It's not an afterthought. Like, it'll happen anyways. No, it has to be a conscious effort, not only based on background, also based on ethnic backgrounds, financial backgrounds, people's challenges in their history, and also based upon if they were born Muslim or converted, and so many different things. So it has to be somewhat inclusive. And the thing that brings us all together is knowledge. Knowledge doesn't need to be taught in a biased lens. teach it in its truest form through love. And I think it will attract people naturally. You don't have to do much. And I'm going to use a car example. I know my brother won't like this because he's a big car guy. Mufti Abdul Rahman. He's like, you should never use car examples because I'm not really a car guy. But you don't have to do much to make a Lamborghini look nice.
Yeah.
You don't have to like tune it up and add new rims and, it's a Lambo.
Yeah.
It just looks nice as it is. You have to do a lot to Honda Civic, to make it look nice, or to like a Dodge Charger. Like I'm not sure you got Dodge Chargers here, but like you have to do a lot to make it like sound nice, look nice, feel nice. But a Lambo, you just sit inside. You just
it's done.
That's what Deen is. You don't have to do a lot. We don't put a lot of makeup on Deen. The problem is when we undo it, like when we remove layers of Deen, right?
Present it in the worst of manners.
In the worst of manners, and then it becomes a challenge. It's like, oh, Deen isn't what I thought it was. No, it's because we gave a different compromise per se presentation of it, or overwhelming presentation at times as well. Sometimes it can be overwhelming to people. So it has to be a good balance, I think, which we're all looking for. The balance. وَقِيمُ الْوَزْنَ بِالْقِسْطِ. Once the balance is found, then you stick to that balance. Then
and showing that, I guess, Islam is applicable to all places, all circumstances, all people. That's the inclusivity of it all. So even if you are in Michigan, you're able to appeal to the American Muslim population.
And then even non-American Muslim population to an extent, because it's knowledge, right? And you're not speaking something which is new or different. Deen, like the approach of Deen, yes, methodologies can change, but the crux of it has always been the same. La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, and then bringing people towards it, to love. Whatever you can use through permissible means. I do believe we cannot use impermissible means to create permissible ends. It has permissible means. Whatever we can use, we use it. Whatever we have to do, however we have to change to an extent to bring people in. And when they come in, don't treat them like a number. Don't treat them like a customer. Treat them with love. Like a sibling, like
it has their own intrinsic value.
They should have value beyond the number, which people struggle with. Like it's just a number now. It's not a number. The Prophet once there was a youngster in Medina. The Prophet used to walk in the marketplaces. Right. This is an example of how he brought value into people. And he comes from behind him, and famous story where he hugs him and he bear hugs him and he just squeezes him. And that person tries to get out, and then he notices the Prophet's hands, and he just, Anas ibn Malik says, ما مسست ديباج ولا حريرا ألين من كف رسول الله. I've never touched any cloth that is softer than the hands of the Prophet. So he sees his hands and kind of eases up, and the Prophet says, من يشتري مني هذا الغلام, who will buy this slave from me? And it was a joke. He wasn't a slave, and he was just having fun with him, and he leaves him. And as he's leaving him, the man says, إذن وجدتني كاسدا يا رسول الله. If you want to sell me, you'll find me to be very worthless and cheap. Like, I'm not worth much, man. I don't have much to provide people. I don't have much value. This is where he's coming from. The Prophet sets him down, and that moment of humor makes a point that we are still struggling to make to our own children. And he makes it such a subtle, quick point, right? And it's not done so formally. It's done informally, right? أقلها تكلف. When Abdullah Masud describes Sahabas, he says, there were people, أبرها قلوب, had the best hearts, clean hearts. أعمقها علم, they had the deepest of knowledge. And أقلها تكلف, they had the least, force-made formalities, like forced formalities. Just out of love, you can speak to each other. He says to him, بل عند الله غالية, but in the eyes of Allah, you're very expensive, and you have a lot of value. And that person, imagine the Prophet saying that to you, like, oh man, you know what? I can fly tomorrow. If the Prophet is saying that to me, then that's all I need. I don't need anything else. If that was to us, like, you don't have much going on yet, but you need to work on it.
You got all the validation you need.
That's all you need.
That's all you need.
That's all you need, man.
So imagine like the impact that has to the psyche of an individual to feel like he's valued by the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But definitely starts in your homes. Say it to your children. Say it to your students. I guess say it to your attendees. Don't. Oh, hey, you're just a number. Thanks for coming. Thanks for filling up my Jummah today.
There needs to be genuine love. Like, and then if emotions, right? If we can gauge emotions, if we can gauge grief without someone saying they're sad, if we can gauge happiness without someone saying they're happy, do you not think we can gauge love without someone saying that we love them? They can feel it, and if we don't have it, we cannot provide it. And that source of love must come from an everlasting place. And Ghazali says this, rahimahullah, Imam Ghazali. He says, if we connect our joy and love to a temporary source, that effect will also be temporal. So work, family, even family, for us, even though because everyone has to leave, it has to come from an everlasting source for it to be everlasting. And that source is only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that they have to be able to feel it. In Seerah, we only find 2 times the Prophet actually told people that he loves them from the men. Right? One was Zayd ibn Haritha, and one was Mu'adh ibn Jabal. Like he actually told them that I love you. But every single person felt that they were more beloved to the Prophet than the person sitting next to them.
Yeah.
And this can be found in the story of Amr ibn As, who his entire life is actually fighting against the Prophet ﷺ. As the leaders of Quraysh. He was actually sent to Habasha to pull the Muslims back when they went for migration in the 5th year of Nabuwah. The entire life and he became Muslim in the 6th to 7th year of Hijrah. So he only lived as a Muslim for 2 to 3 years with the Prophet ﷺ. Okay, so he's only there for a little while. And this narration takes place a few months after he becomes Muslim. So you can imagine where he's coming from. Like he's a new dude. He's not only a new person, he's a person that was actually on the opposite end for the longest time.
One of the enemies.
Right?
Extreme.
Extreme opposite. And when they start talking about who the Prophet loves the most, like, yo, man, the Prophet loves me more than all you guys. It's like, you just became Muslim. Like, what do you mean? Like, no, if you don't believe me, I'm confident enough to ask. A lot of times we can make claims, but we're not confident enough to ask.
Verify those claims.
Like, we don't want to verify, maybe it is, maybe. Check Google. No, I don't want to check Google. We'll check tomorrow, because you may be wrong. He was so confident. He was ready to put his respect on the line. And he went and he asked the Prophet ﷺ, Man ahabbu an-nasa ilayka ya Rasulullah. And the Prophet says, Aisha. And Prophet was very smart. He says, radiyallahu anha, your mother Aisha. He said, no,
from the men.
We know that, man. We're not going to compete with your wife or your spouse. From the men, who do you love the most? He says, Abuha. And even that, he referred to her. He didn't say Abu Bakr. He said Abuha. Like it's back to her. Her father. It's okay, Abu Bakr, we all know. He is who he is. Who's after that? Where do I? Or Umar. Then who? Then Uthman. Then he said, I stopped asking. Because I felt bad. If I keep asking, I may come at that. Because the Prophet's not going to lie. He will joke, but he won't lie. But the fact that he could feel that way without the Prophet telling him that I love him shows you how much people can feel loved just by our presence around him without us having to say much. A lot of times we'll say all the words, but the person will still not feel loved. That becomes from our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We build our relationship with Allah not only for ourselves, we build it for others, right? It's not a selfish relationship. It's actually a relationship that should be giving to others.
I think that comes back down to the first commandment of Prophet Muhammad, Iqra Muhammad, Iqra, read, so that the people may know what is greater than they may know of themselves already. And it's through learning as well, especially that really comes into light and into effect.
That's powerful. And also, I guess this comes back to the point of, make this bond that we have for the sake of Allah.
I apologize. I hope I answered your question.
No, you did. You definitely did. I feel like love is...
that's why I'm not a good host. I end up speaking more than I ask.
But love is definitely one of the foundation blocks for building a community, inclusive community. And at the same time, it has to be tied back to Allah, as we read in the Quran, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبَلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا. Like, hold together to the rope of Allah.
Under the title of
together.
فَعْلَمْ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ.
And know that there is no God but Allah. But at the same time, وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. Like right after that, it says, and don't divide. Like, right? Everyone hold together, love one another, but don't divide.
It's not Imam Shafi rahimahullah. Cut you off. He would have these debates with people. And after the debate, he would come to the person and say, hey man, want to go have some lunch? And the guy's like, yo, you just slammed me, man. Like, openly, you want to have lunch with me? He said, can we not still be friends and disagree? Right? It's okay. Like, it's not a big deal.
I heard one story. I don't know how authentic it is, but I heard that he had a big debate with someone. You can verify it probably. And then he knocked on the door of the guy's house and they asked him, who's at the door? He says, Muhammad ibn Idris. And he goes, I thought of everyone named Muhammad ibn Idris and I couldn't think of anyone. Is it really a Shafi'i? He goes, oh, it's actually Imam Shafi'i at his door. And he tells him, we agree on a 99 or
Percent,
100?
just
Are we going to
break our relationship
break our
over?
relationship over one?
100%.
Yeah.
And that's where I want to go to next. And this is a bit of a contentious
Just
issue.
on that point, Imam Abu Hanifa Rahimullah's son started. Imam Abu Hanifa Rahimullah's journey to ilm began with debating aqaid. His first niche of knowledge was the aqaid. And then after that he went into fiqh. There was a certain point that incident took place, which is for another day, inshallah. But his son was also started debating. So one day his father says to him, "What are you debating people for?" Within the Muslims, obviously, like within the fiqh differences and so on and so forth. He's like, "Yeah, oh father, you used to debate as well. Like, why you beating me up for it, man? Like, I'm just doing what you did." He said there was a fundamental difference. When we used to debate, we would make dua before going to the debate that, "Oh Allah, make our brother or sister not falter and make a mistake." And you all, when you debate, you're just waiting for the other person to slip so you can jump on them. Right? So when Imam Shafi'i Rahimahullah was going to the person's house after he stomped on him pretty much out of love, and he's still showing him respect, that person feels valid. That person still feels okay with his opinion, and he's all right. For us, when the moment we get our upper hand on someone, and come on, like it won't even be in something like worth arguing about. It could be like something about cars or sports. Like I told you,
something so irrelevant.
it's like so mundane. Like but we're gonna hold that till our grave. Like I told you I was right, and all of us youngsters are culprits of this. And I'm not saying this.
If that wasn't a parable
100%.
for modern times, I don't know.
It's
What
just
would
like we're all
exactly.
struggling with it.
In today's day and age, rampant with cancel culture, like no respect for scholarship, calling out this person, calling out that person
I
over
think that's
the
where all faults begin, is the misuse of your tongue. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
most minute of differences we're ready to hold grudges. And I guess this really speaks volumes of what brotherhood actually means. If your idea of brotherhood is we have to agree on 100% of things, you will have no brothers left.
You won't have your own brothers.
You won't even have your own brothers. So how have you, I guess, been able to overcome this challenge of the very vast differences that are rampant within Muslim communities and bring hearts together? I know Miftaah Institute has done a phenomenal job of bringing different organizations together on the same podium, on the same stage, under the same banner of La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. How have you been able to bring these communities together? Communities that could have been, at odds with their differences, and bring those hearts together.
I think first thing is we haven't done anything. I think it's alhamdulillah, it's happened. A lot of times, we really haven't done it. It just happened, right? And one of the reasons why it happened, because I do think it's a conscious effort. It's not like, if it happens, it happens. It doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. In the back of our minds, there's du'as, there's an effort to connect with people despite their differences. I mean, as Shafi'i Rahimahullah said, we agree with 99%. So what if we disagree with 1%? Like, does that really matter?
This the Imam Shafi'i podcast. I know you're
No.
Imam Shafi'i is taking the crown today.
Man. But it's 1%. Just let it go. We disagree. Even at work, at school, with our colleagues, we still work at the same place. We disagree with some things that our employers are doing, with our managers that are doing, but we're still going to
disagree with a lot.
I'm
joking.
I'm sure this is, but you still do it because you
agree
see
to
that,
disagree.
that you see that there's still benefit in it, right? So the moment we don't leave everything else because of it, we don't leave our works because of it, our workplaces. We don't leave our education because I saw something that I didn't agree with. You still go to class. So why would we leave the effort of deen because of small disagreements? And those disagreements, there are disagreements though. We honor them. It's not like I don't agree with, we have to change for it. Like what you said, overcome. You don't have to just compromise and say, we agree with everything. That's not the idea. The idea is we do have disagreements and we'll be able to work together. The second thing I would add is that there's been great love amongst scholarship. So if there was not that type of akhuwiyat amongst the people that are in somewhat responsible for this, it wouldn't be possible. So you have like the Shaykh Suleimans and Yaqeen Institute, mashallah, who is so loving. Then you have the scholars of Al-Maghrib who are so loving. And then you have the scholars of Qadam, Shaykh Abdul Nasir, and Mufti Kamani, Mikael Smith. They're so loving. So there's a lot of love. Shaykh Hamza Yusuf and Imam Zaid Shakir, who are the pioneers who have nothing but love to give you. So if you're receiving love, then it's easy. And you're not really worried about certain aspects of your relationship. You're just focused on one aspect. This works out if there is no other incentive except for deen. The moment you add secondary incentives, that I want to also do this through this relationship, that's when things start to break down.
It's no longer for Allah.
It's no longer for Allah. It can be for your institution even, but it has to be one thing. We're getting together for this purpose, for this event, and that's it. We're not really looking for any other benefit from each other. I want you to do this for me afterwards, or I know you run this business. Can you help me with this? No, our relationship was fundamentally set for only this. Now afterwards we can meet again for something else, and we can have a new relationship. But we're not gonna obscure our relationship over here. We're gonna keep it for what it was, and that love, camaraderie, it builds. It builds trust. So now it's not as difficult to work together anymore,
Building
because
the
there's a lot
bridge.
of love that you build bridges. I think it's a conscious effort, though. I do think it's a conscious effort that we should all take part of.
That's exactly. I think that would answer the question I would have asked you, is that people are kind of stuck in their own little bubble. But I think that's what you've mentioned. If the secondary goal becomes a primary goal, and if maybe if it comes from a nafs point of view as well. But I think it's like you said, it's very important to reach out as well.
And I don't mind those people that don't do it. I actually don't mind. I don't mind people who
Each
say,
to their own, I think.
I don't mind
as
people that
well.
want to say that I just want to do my own work.
Yeah.
I want to stay focused on what I'm doing. That's perfectly fine, because there's room for that. You know, in order to say Medan bahut wasi' hai, which means like the place of work is very vast. There's so much work to be done, right? So there's enough crops to harvest in a sense, right? So if people are focused, let them focus on it. Push them to focus. Don't take them away from their focus.
I like
And if
that.
some institutions are the bridges, they have made a conscious effort to do that, then we should help them to do that, right? Not everyone has to be that, though. I think then in some ways it would be difficult for those organizations to build the next generation of imams. So for example, we have our seminary, our boarding seminary called Michigan Islamic Institute. If that started doing this, I don't think it would be able to focus on what it's doing. Right? Miftaah should do it. That's the idea behind it. OnePath should do it too.
everyone should just like, as long as the key point, I guess the key takeaway is that there is that love, there is that respect. One of my favorite ad'iyat from the Quran is وَلَا تَجْعَلْ فِي قُلُوبِنَا غِلًّا لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Don't put a hatred or rancor within my heart for those who believe. And we know one of the key features of the people of Jannah. So like,
and that's one of the greatest blessings of Jannah.
That love, that true love will be manifested in Jannah, with nothing in our hearts of that irritation or rancor. It's just complete bliss and love.
So much love that you would be just saying salams for seven days.
It's just straight salam.
Just salams, like
not the superficial salam alaikum. The real. And it's okay if you have that in this world. It's okay, because we're humans, but we have to be able to fight it off. Like, it's not supposed to be that. If it was supposed to be easy to study for deen at any level, I'm talking about for youngsters, it's available at every level now, right? There's so many organizations and institutions. If it was supposed to be easy to serve deen, then the Prophet would have found it the easiest, because there was no one smarter, more strategical, more able, more capable than him. But there was a struggle. And in that struggle, there is a reward. وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا. That struggle is what allows us to, feel like a sense of fulfillment. So it's okay if we have, I'm not sure if I agree with that, but you know what? Let me try to fight that and work together. And sometimes the greatest enemy is ignorance, right? Like, so just because of ignorance, there's a sense of, oh, this person doesn't like us, or this person, I can't work with them, or we can't work with them. So I'm sure OnePath doesn't want to work with Miftaah. Now the better.
We're building bridges here. That's why we're building bridges.
Subscribe to OnePath.
I'm Miftaah.
I wanted to take it from that point. So you've talked about, as long as the juhud is there, the struggle is there, and the end goal, which is of course the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when you pass away, you've left something behind. So I want to move to the topic of legacy. And on that note, I wanted to play a video, if you don't mind. I'll get you to wear those headphones. On the topic of legacy, we just wanted to play one video and get your thoughts. Rahimahullah.
You know, one is close to our heart. But legacy, I often say we have to continue finding sources of motivation in the work that we're doing. We can never stop looking for new places of motivation. And I think for me, for all of us, I think for us brothers and anyone that's close to us, one of those newfound places of motivation was our brother, rahimahullah. I mean, there's not a single thing that we do except that, you know, we have him not in the back of our mind. It's in the front of our mind. Events, classes. It's difficult, but it's more difficult now because you often think of how he would have been a part of it, been able to join, help, support. Such a talented person. I haven't we met a lot of people, very few people that are perhaps, I'm not saying this because he's my brother, very talented. So you could, as thinking not as an older brother, but thinking as a person of institution, I would often think of different ways of how he would just help and blossom. But there was different plans that Allah wrote. But we take a lot of motivation from him. You know, when I'm in town, which normally I'm in town, I travel only on the weekends. We visit him 3-4 times a week. And it's not necessarily always for him. It's more for us. It's more for me. The Prophet used to visit the people of Uhud every Wednesday. They're in Jannah. They're shuhada. Hamza and Mus'ab, but it was for him to connect again. And he would visit Baqi every Thursday. And this is outside of the janazas that he would take part in, right? That's all you were saying.
No, I thought that was very, very powerful. For those who didn't know, that was your brother who transitioned from this world.
Abdul Rahim.
I believe.
Yeah, October 5th of 2020.
October 5th.
Yeah, so it's almost a few months away from being 2 years. But you know, my brother Shaykh Abdul Aziz, who's a physician now, he one of the things that he said was, you know, may the wounds heal but never seal. You know, like of course we have to move. There was no darker day in this world than the day that our Habib Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam left this world. That was Anas ibn Malik says رضي الله عنه لما دخل النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم المدينة أضاء منها كل شيء ولما مات النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أظلم منها كل شيء. He says when the Prophet entered Medina, it lit up the entire city. It was like, and when he left and he transitioned, it was like the entire city became dark again. أظلم منها كل شيء. Like this, there was no darker day. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu comes, uncovers his face, kisses him on the forehead, and he reminds us, طِبْتَ حَيًّا وَمَيِّتًا يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. You were beautiful when you were alive, and you're beautiful at this point as well. But for us, it was a very dark day, right? Especially when, I think, the challenge of young, and at the same time, fuja'ah. The Prophet used to seek refuge. Allahumma na'udhu bika min mawt al-fuja'ah. Just sudden. And at the same time, just came back a few months before. My teacher, one of the teachers at our school, he said very beautifully that he came after, but he won the race. Sometimes you're behind in the race, but then you go ahead and win. So Allahumma ja'al khayra ayyami yawma alqaka feek. This is a beautiful dua. So he left while serving. So now we often say that we wish we were in his space, not because of not liking life or enjoying life. I mean, I don't think life is supposed to be enjoyable. I really believe, I don't say that because it's surface level. I really believe life is supposed to be, you're supposed to be content. But enjoyment is for the akhirah. That's the word that Allah uses to define akhirah. Is فَهُوَ فِي عِيشَةٍ رَاضِيَةٍ. Enjoyment that is continuously giving you. Right? كُلَّمَا رُزِقُوا مِنْهَا مِنْ ثَمَرَةٍ رِزْقًا قَالُوا هَذَا الَّذِي رُزِقْنَا مِنْ قَبْلِ. No, وَأُتُوا بِهِ مُتَشَابِهًا. No two bites of the same apple will taste the same. So it's continuous giving. Life is supposed to be a place of being content. إِذَا كُنْتَ ذَا قَلْبٍ قُنُوعٍ فَأَنْتَ وَمَالِكُ الدُّنْيَا سَوَاء. Imam Shaykh Rahimahullah says, وَلَا حُزْنٌ يَدُومُ وَلَا سُرُورٌ وَلَا بُؤْسٌ عَلَيْكَ وَلَا رَخَاءُ. He says, nothing will stay. Everything's going to continue changing. But if you're a person that is content, then you will be like the king of the world, right? So in that same aspect, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu never smiled after the Prophet passed away. Fatima radiallahu anha for 6 months, she never smiled. Her best day after the Prophet leaving was the day she was leaving. That morning she smiled, right? They would look forward to death so they could meet the Prophet again. Where Bilal radiallahu anhu at his deathbed, when his wife would say, "Wa huzna," what a sad day it is, he would reply by saying, "Wa taraba, wa faraha," what a happy day. غَدًا نَلْقَى مُحَمَّدًا وَحِزْبًا. Tomorrow I will meet the Prophet and his companions.
What is better than death than to meet your Creator as well?
With iman, meaning your loved ones. So it was another form of motivation, and really you wish to also leave in a similar way, like that, in a way of serving, your parents. So he was teaching hadith from 8 to 12:30, which is the alim program, and in between he had a half an hour break. And after that half an hour, he would go to the other institute and teach Quran for 4 hours. So hadith, Quran. And in between, on that day, he was picking up medication for my mother. So he's teaching hadith, the aqwal of the Prophet ﷺ, and then he's going to serve his mother to teach Quran. And in between that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took him. So this is one of the last lesson he taught. I didn't know this till the students told me. That was the hadith of the dua of janazah and how to pray salatul janazah. He left on a Monday, and that was a Monday he taught that, and then he left. So these are signs, but at the same time we got to continue working. It wasn't as if Abu Bakr stopped working. He said, "No, I'm done. I can't do this anymore." We have to continue fighting through it, and use it as a motivation, not as a form of decapitating you and paralyzing you, because in so many ways it can paralyze you. And I think us, siblings can be very close, and some of them are not as close. I would consider us to be very close. Allah keep us that way. Especially he was youngest after me, so
the soft spot.
It was a very close-knit relationship, and alhamdulillah, we honor that, and
from the
ask Allah to join us again in the akhirah. This is not. This is just an intermission. And inshallah, we're going to connect again. Ala surin masfufa, ala surin mutaqabilin. We believe that. I feel for those who don't believe in akhirah. How do you bear with your pain? How do you bear with your loss? How do you wake up in the morning knowing that, or believing that there is no akhirah and you won't meet your parents again? It's difficult.
All that stress, but no relief.
And for us, it's khalas. لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. There'll be a time where I'll be able to hug him again and kiss him, right? And we'll be able to hug the Prophet ﷺ. And at that moment we say, Ya Rasulullah, you struggled more than anyone, but we saw a little bit of pain too. Is that hopefully that made Allah happy, right? And if we take it the right way, how Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah says, the niqmah can also be a ni'mah. From that I do see that we should know how to console one another. There's another process, but that's a different discussion. Our responsibility is not to always tell people that it's okay. Our responsibility at times is just to be present for people. Just be there. Just give them a shoulder. We don't always have to say, well, he's in Jannah anyways. What? I got that.
I felt like it comes back to the earlier discussion we had when you said the Prophet ﷺ, he was smiling the most, but he was also carrying that sadness. So even in those times of sadness, there's a glimpse of happiness, and we're seeing that right here. Yes, it's okay to cry.
It's okay, man. Crying is a call of the day. Our hearts need to be softened, and for us, to cry is very easy now. Obviously, our brother. When it first happened, I actually wrote a small poem and I actually mentioned it in that. I said when it first happened, we used to hide our tears, but now we walk with pride. And we're not hiding our tears. The Prophet cried in front of Sahabas. When Abdul Raheem Waheed asked him, when Ibrahim transitioned his son, what is this, Ya Rasulullah? He said, هذه رحمة. This is love. This is mercy. العين تدمع والقلب يحزن ولا نقول إلا بما يرضى به ربنا. But we cannot say anything that goes against the accord in accordance to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then that's the reality of inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un kicks in. That reality is very important, that we always belong to Allah, and we all have to return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But crying is, my students, anytime I'm teaching tafsir of certain ayat, I cry. And I don't even hide why I'm crying. I don't even say I'm crying because I'm very pious, or no, I'm crying because I miss my brother. Right? That's it. There's no cover up to it. Sometimes there's no cover. This is it. And it's not our spouse. It's not our children. It's not our parents. It's our brother. So this is a different type of love, which I think all of us experience, and it also teaches us to be more loving to our siblings, more caring, more compassionate. more generous with our compliments, and those things sometimes
letting people know
letting people
that.
know who they are, and
Mm.
of course making them feel it, but that making them feel it should not be like a scapegoat for not saying it.
Mhm.
Just say it too at times. You don't have to say that much, where it becomes sometimes madah, or it becomes fake or exaggerated.
Mhm.
But say it once in a while. It's good to say it, right? And I often say, the tears that we have is what allows the heart to be fertilized
Yeah.
for
I
deen.
think the biggest problem is many of us don't cry.
Mm.
Like,
You know,
I'll
so
speak for
how do you
myself.
cry now?
Yeah.
How?
Mm.
A lot of times we think that we have to cry because it comes from a place of like deep, high spirituality. Like I'm at a different point. Use different reasons to make you tear up.
Mm.
It doesn't always have to be something symbolic to deen. It can be, I'm crying because I lost someone.
It can be very hard because we've become very neutralized in the sense where we're reading, our news feeds are bombarded with atrocity after atrocity, and it becomes a
We
norm.
become desensitized. It's a
Desensitized.
coping
Desensitized is the
mechanism.
word, yes.
So my brother, Surah Rahimullah, I will live with it on my sleeve till we leave. Not because I feel like he's important, like his legacy is important. I do think his legacy is important, but I also believe that it can help people's hearts soften,
100%.
right? And that's important because if we can find, like for me, if I can use it to cry because I miss him, but then use those tears for something else as well. It would be very selfish of us to only use it for that. Use it for something else. So some of
كفى بالموت واعظة. Let it
كفى
be a
بالموت
reminder.
واعظة. But we can use that to cry for other purposes. Ya Allah, I'm already crying. Ya Allah, protect the ummah. Ya Allah, preserve the sunnah of your Habib. So now you can use it to cry more about something else, right? It doesn't have to stop there. Sometimes what you see online, sometimes thinking about your parents that have left this world, or whoever it is, it's important to visit them. ألهاكم التكاثر حتى زرتم المقابر. It's good to go, softens your heart. Shaykh Suleiman Mullah was a great scholar. He once said that the graveyard is the quietest place with the loudest message.
Wow.
Like
He's got a ton of.
he's got a ton of those.
ton of lines.
Like that's it. That's
He
what the
says,
graveyard is.
Aspire to inspire
Before you expire. We love Shaykh, but that's important. What he's like, you just go there. You don't need kafab al-mawti wa'idha means just that. You don't need anyone to give you a lecture there. But at the same time, how valuable is life? How valuable is life? Life is valuable. So no one should take it as something small
Or diminish it.
Just appreciate it.
You came into this world through love and through Allah's mercy, right? And I think we should also reciprocate that.
100%. 100%.
But going back to your topic of legacy, inshallah, I don't want to go ahead and if you have anything on that specific topic. I know that's where it was going. The legacy that you build behind, a lot of times it's based on things that no one saw. Like his legacy isn't being built because of us. I don't think that's true. I think his legacy is built because of who he is.
If only you've just
we're benefiting from
just
him.
magnified it as well.
Our legacy is being built because of him, right? ما مدحت محمدا بمقالتي ما إن مدحت محمدا بمقالتي ولكن مدحت مقالتي بمحمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. We have not praised or honored the Prophet by speaking of him or by implementing his sunnah. Rather, our life has been honored and has been decorated or garnished because of his presence in our life and his sunnah in our life and his name in our life. So it's not, his legacy was built because of things that no one saw, right? And we knew about, right? Perhaps others knew about. So a lot of times it's about your relationship with Allah. What do you do when no one is watching, right? And that's important. As much as we do, especially with people that are serving, like yourselves, mashallah, and all of us, it's important to have some things that no one knows about, right? Like Umar Abdul Aziz Rahimullah's wife, she would say about him that at times when her husband would wake up for tahajjud, I would feel his side of the pillow and it would be wet, just tearing. No one would know about it, right? So it's important to have some things in our life that are very, very selfish to us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And everything else is for everyone. So this is why there's a balance. The second or third wahi, which was Surah Muzammil, which was Ya ayyuhal Muzammil, qum al-layla illa qalila, which is your worship that no one knows about. And the next wahi or revelation was Ya ayyuhal Muddathir, qum fa'andir. So part of it is isolation, the other part is assimilation. Like you have to work on yourself in order for your presence to be felt in the masses. The challenge with us is that we want our presence to be felt in the masses without working on ourselves. Or we work on ourselves so much
that we forget
the people, right? So there's dua. We make dua that Allah, where Ibrahim alayhi salam would make the dua, وَجَعَلْ لِي لِسَانَ صِدْقٍ فِي الْآخِرِينَ. O oh Allah, make my remembrance something that people think of and do after I leave amongst the great people. Siddiqan fil akhirin, amongst those that come way after me. So in our ummah, our salat is somewhat incomplete until we mention his name, Ibrahim alayhi salam, right? And he would make dua, وَجَعَلْنِي الْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا, make us leaders. So we should make dua for this. It's not something that we're not allowed to ask, for a sense of leadership. But we're allowed to ask Allah for it, right? We can't ask one another. We can ask, oh Allah, make my life a treasure for people to take from. Make my children, make my family, make the entire student body that we have used for khair. I mean, Allah can make everyone, and Allah can use everyone. There's never too many superstars in the NBA, and you guys don't have the NBA. You guys have some bootleg version, whatever it's called, right?
NBL,
What is it called?
NBL. Don't
I'm
hate,
not.
don't hate.
I'm not even gonna say
Don't
it.
hate, don't hate.
I feel like it's makruh for me to say it.
Don't hate.
But you guys have like another version of football as well, right?
Yeah. What do you guys have over here? You have AFL, right?
Yeah, AFL. AFL is pretty big.
NRL.
League.
Then you have rugby. Rugby, I don't mess with, man. I won't speak bad about rugby because if any of the rugby players just touch me, I'll fly, right?
Yeah.
But there's never enough superstars in the NBA or in soccer because they're all needed to build a brand of NBA or to build a brand of NBL. So the more you have, the better it is for the league. The more people we have serving Deen, the better it is for Deen. It brings more light to Deen. It brings more presence to Deen, right? So there's so much to do, right? But it's good to live for a legacy. Right? It's good to work for it.
I guess we kind of come full cycle now. Like we're back at the start with the dua of your mother, which was like the same as the dua of Ibrahim, to make this legacy, to have this whole ummah of leaders and make our children and our lineage leaders for the Muslim community. So we're back to where we started, and that's like a full cycle. We started with the life, then we went to the family.
That's why you're the greatest podcast in the world, because you guys do
and
that.
Now we're
mashallah.
right back where we started, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to only take us when He's pleased. Ameen. لا توفنا إلا وأنت راض عنا. And to make the last of our days the best of our days, and the last of our amal, the last of our deeds, the best of our deeds.
Ameen.
And when we are resurrected, may Allah make us of those who the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is proud of. You know,
I mean, may we plant the seeds and for that to give give of the fruit, the ripe fruit for those that come after us as well, inshallah.
Ameen, ya Rabbi. You guys are blessed with such a beautiful group of brothers and sisters around you, mashallah, and people around you that can support each other. This is a rare thing that most people don't have. So may Allah keep you all together, united. Allow the work of OnePath to also be a work that is a legacy for people. Sometimes it's not sometimes, all the time. It's never about the individual. It's about the effort.
If anything, we would love for OnePath to, work even without us, but not even being in this space.
That's the idea.
For it to outgrow us, inshallah.
keep making dua.
Taking
the dua of the scholars, as we mentioned.
OnePath is amazing, mashallah. Allow you all to continue doing your great work. And I told them off camera that their work is seen across the world, especially in our circles. And mashallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow it to continue playing that role and continue growing in that space, and whatever we can do to be a part of it and to serve will be an honor for us as well, inshallah. Allah bless you guys, and inshallah we see each other more often, inshallah.
It's been a pleasure.
Hopefully I don't have to take a 15-hour flight next time. Hopefully you guys can take a flight.
If you can escape that, then you'll be more often.
You have to come to the States, I've spoken about coming out offline. I said you got to come to the States, but inshallah we'll plan it together. Inshallah.
Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to our viewers. We hope you enjoyed this conversation. I know I did, and I greatly benefited from it. Until next time, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khair.